Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for my introduction. I'm not going to offer the same courtesy to these gentlemen next to me because they are far, far better well known than me. So I deserve that introduction, they don't. But the point is that we are living in the age of unicorns. And, of course, when we were growing up, unicorns were these white horses with a single horn on their head. But now we're looking at multi-billion-dollar baggers. So it's a fascinating time to be an entrepreneur in India. And I can say with great confidence that last few years, the kind of entrepreneurship that India has seen is beyond any country that you can imagine. As the world's largest open market, free democracy, to have such entrepreneurship is really worth celebrating in India. Sometimes we lose the picture because, there is a lot of troubles we face on a daily basis, but it's quite fascinating. I think what I'd like to talk to Harsh, Bhavit and Alok is about the startup ecosystem, the importance of being a unicorn, but most importantly, what is it that is driving the passion, the entrepreneurship, and the urge to do well in India? Because there was, of course, a generation which felt that going out is better, but now we are equally well divided. I'm going to begin with Alok and ask him about that. Alok, today, of course, everybody sees, decacorns, unicorns. But the first question is that when you start out, do you have that goal of billion-dollar valuation? Or do you think that, well, let me just get through this week and make sure that I still survive?
Hi, so thanks for having me on the panel. And you are exactly right, Pranjal. Whether it's unicorn or whether it's some other term that the media wants to use, eventually, early days, it's all about survival. It's all about trying to figure out what is the right product market fit and how do you keep team motivated? Because at that stage, obviously, the business goes through so many ups and downs. And it's very, very tough to keep yourself motivated and obviously then keep team motivated. So it's more about thinking about immediate future rather than thinking about a particular valuation that you may get in future. It's usually, I can tell about ourselves, we never thought that we'll get to a particular number in any particular time frame. It was always about, can we solve this problem and can we become a meaningful player in this industry? And if you do that, at some point, yes, you may get valued, but that cannot be the motivation.
Would you say the same, Harsh?
I think when we started out, at least, right? This was 2008. There was, I think, maybe one or two unicorns in the country that were looking at it, I think there were none maybe at that time. InfoEdge maybe. So I think when we started out, there's no way we ever thought of unicorn even. I think at that time we didn't even know कि ऐसा unicorn नाम का कुछ चीज़ था, right? We just wanted to solve a problem that we faced, which was to play fantasy cricket. IPL was starting in 2008. We went to look for fantasy cricket, and there was none. So we said, chalo, Bhavit and I were both engineers. We said, let's put our engineering degree to some use, and we started out. We didn't think, how big will it be? When will we exit? Which investors will we get? I think, and that is what the true spirit of entrepreneurship has to be. You start to solve a problem that you deeply and personally care about, which you will not rest till you solve it. And that's what forms a fundamental base for us.
Bhavit, to add to what Harsh is saying, it's also fascinating that the concept you came up with was something which hadn't even been thought of in the country. Now, while Alok was in the insurance business and he brought a model which allowed consumers to get the best value, what you thought of, both of you thought of, was something which consumers didn't know that they wanted. How did that happen?
Yeah, so it was something, as Harsh also said, it's a personal problem that we wanted to solve, right? And we thought that, there are a billion people in this country. Most of them are passionate about sport, cricket in particular. And there's no fantasy sport to serve those users. And that's how we decided that, let's go ahead and, build this out, which is a personal problem, which would be a problem for other people as well. So, it was that passion about something that we wanted to do. Also, we had been fantasy sports players for 10 years before we even decided to start this. So we had that passion, we had that motivation to go and solve that problem. And I think that's what both Alok and Harsh also said, is that you need to be solving a problem. It can't just be that, okay, you know, something's working well somewhere, let's copy it and let's do it.
Yeah, I remember when we were early stage, we read this news about InMobi, $200 million funding, and we were like, oh wow, such a big number and a valuation, and unheard of totally. And today, as you know, obviously these numbers are quite common.
How many people in the hall have used Policybazaar at some point? Well, that's a pretty big market. And how many are users of Dream11?
So you know you're going to be busy at 7 o'clock today.
No, but tell me, is it also a demographic issue, Harsh? Because when we talk about unicorns, and we are talking about unmet needs, we're talking about solving a problem, but it seems to me that you're also solving a problem for a generation of consumers which didn't exist earlier.
That's right. I think there's been a tectonic shift in user behavior in the last 10 odd years. Consumers today are what you can call like the TikTok generation, or they need instant gratification. They have no patience. They want to connect with their friends. They want to compete. They want to do exciting things, and they want it now. They want it yesterday. So even when we started fantasy sports, actually, Bhavit and I are big believers in season long, which means you make one team for the whole year and you manage it. And that's what we started out in 2008 with. And then we spent 4 years learning what not to do and learning to adapt to what the user wants, which was a daily game. But every match, they wanted to make a team and change it. And I know that sounds trivial, but it's not. But users have to be first. And this generation is completely different. And we as businesses have to serve that user need.
But it's also, in your case specifically, in case of fantasy sports, now this is not a term that I grew up with, or, even younger kids have grown up with. Fantasy sports in some ways has leapfrogged, from console-based gaming to completely online gaming to fantasy gaming of games which perhaps, exist only in the mind. So how did you identify that? It was your personal problem, as Bhavit said. But how did you feel that this was the problem of a few million people in the country?
So, that's a great question, Pranjal. But anyone that goes to their family, their friends, your taxi driver, your car driver, your staff at home, anyone, right? You watch a match with them, watch an India match with them. And they'll say, yaar, ye Rohit Sharma ko opening kyun bhej raha hai? Yaar, Virat Kohli ko aise marna chahiye tha. Aise square cut, aise jana chahiye. And it's amazing, but everyone has an opinion in sports. And that is the opinion on which fantasy sports is built. It allows you to make your team for the match and put your money where your mouth is. It allows you to make a team before the match begins and then showcase your cricket knowledge, which you claim to have, which we're sure you do. But it allows you to make a team and show people that, yes, I actually knew who are going to play well on this wicket, in these conditions, against this opposition, based on their form in the past history. And that's exactly what we market it as. That it's not marketed as fantasy cricket or fantasy sports. It's marketed as a chance to make your dream team. And that's why it's called Dream11, a dream team of 11 players.
I think what Harsh also spoke about was change in user behavior, right? Today, fantasy sports has become a ubiquitous term. But, if you look at 10 years ago, we used to get questions like, I've created my team, now my batsman is not batting, my bowler is not bowling, what do I do? And then we had to explain, no, it's not a simulated game, it's a strategy game, right? Where you have to, select a team of players and they'll get points based on their performance. So it has been a journey, and because there's been this entire generation of people who love sports, they've been able to adopt, and now we've come to a situation where sports consumption increases because people play fantasy sports.
That's actually fantastic. I want to come to the fact that you were in both your companies, you were the first movers. You created a category which didn't exist. But Alok, and I'll come to both of you, Bhavit and Harsh as well. Several people tried to copy your model, right, Alok? And they tried to create, I'll do the Policybazaar of something else, I'll do the Policybazaar of something else. It's like, people said, we'll do the Uber of almost everything. I'll do the Uber of water drinking. But from 2008 till now, you have maintained a lead. So it's one thing to start up and get some funding, but it's another to go from a startup bootstrap mentality that 5 friends are working together 12 hours a day, 18 hours a day, but then to build an organization and to successfully compete against others. What kind of blood and toil does it take?
So first of all, we were not the first. We might have been 5th or 8th, I don't even know. So there were a lot of other players, some of them funded as well. But somewhere I think we just didn't have that option to fail. So first few years, we did whatever it took to survive. And one of the things little unique about us was that none of us came from the insurance background or even finance services background. Even today, if you look at the Policybazaar business, out of top 50 people, maybe 1% has ever worked in insurance sector. So we were very, from that perspective, sort of challenging the status quo and not afraid to ask stupid questions. And that continues even today. But somewhere I think we had already done a failed company earlier. So this time we didn't have a choice to fail. And we were told multiple times that it's a very tough category. There's almost no peer globally. So what we're trying to do in India with health and life insurance is something quite unique. We had some funding, but not enough for the first 6-7 years. But we just thought that we are not ready to give up yet. Maybe after another few years we'll do that, but right now it's worth putting some more time of your life into this. And this is the advice I give to a lot of other people. One of my friends joined a early stage company relatively. So I told him, you will get frustrated hundreds of times. Whenever you think that you want to move on, take the decision, but don't execute for 3 months. Sit on that for 3 months. In 3 months, most likely you'll think differently.
No, but I want to stay with you for a minute, Alok. That's even more fascinating because the perception is that you created the category, but you're saying you were the 4th or 5th. But that means that you came in from behind in some ways and you overtook everybody else and you survived and others didn't.
So basically, everyone used to go back to the same insurance companies and promise them moon. We also learned hard way that there was an opportunity to work with those companies, but you have to take baby steps in terms of how you execute and how you deliver. And when you start delivering, you get deeper and deeper into the relationships. Secondly, touchwood, we had very, very committed team from very early on, and there were people who would be willing to work very, very long hours at a very low salary for quite some time. And there was a joint ownership sort of culture in the company. So that also helped, but it was more about survival till 2012 at least. It was just about survival, nothing else. In fact, there was an occasion where our board and investors actually told us that you don't have a business. This is a very, very difficult category. You guys are decent, you have money, we'll support you, do something else. And we said, no, we are not ready to give up yet.
I think that's a commitment to passion, but from a very highly regulated sector of insurance, which was well established, mature, in some ways it was also very rigid, to fantasy gaming, which, as I said and we discussed, didn't exist. But the fact is, a lot of people have tried their hand at fantasy gaming, right? How is it that you are ahead of everybody else? And I'd like both of you to answer that.
Yeah, so I think, a lot of people said they played Dream11. How many people have heard of Super Selector back in the day? Yeah, so a few people. So actually 2008, IPL is starting. We went looking for Super Selector, which was ESPN Star's fantasy cricket game. And because it wasn't there, we launched Dream11 to solve that problem. My point is that there's a lot of timing as well, right? Super Selector was the right business, wrong time. And we were fortunate enough to be at the right place, right time. But our business model was actually wrong. We started for the first 4 years as a completely wrong business model, entrepreneurs trying to do everything, not focusing on one core problem. And it took us a while to pivot, and then finally find our way in 2012. And then we started seeing product market fit. But yes, it's definitely very difficult to keep on the journey when you're failing consistently. But I think once you find your momentum, you're able to scale up and scale up fast. So if you are a first mover, then you can't just sit back and say, oh, I'm a first mover, I'll be happy and I'll be fine. We needed to raise our series A, B, C, D, and really scale up the company. At that point, we were growing about 300, 400, 500% year over year for 5 years. But we had to do that to really scale up the company and create those moats and competitive barriers. And yes, today, at last count, we counted 184 companies in India that do exactly what we do.
Bhavit?
Yeah, so I'll actually, we are sports companies, I'll give you a sports analogy, right? In sports, the very few percentage of players will be very skilled. The other players get to where they get because of hard work, because of the amount of practice they put in. And, some example like Virat Kohli, Cristiano Ronaldo, you'll always hear about the story of how they've been struggling and constantly working on their game, constantly practicing, multiple hours of practice, and then they get to where they've gotten. So, to translate it into business terms, you can have the best strategy, but if your execution and your work ethic is not there, you'll never be able to get to where you are. So it's very important that you have the strategy, but you execute it also very well.
That's exactly the point, Bhavit, I wanted to dwell on, which is that it's one thing to be in the right place at the right time with the right idea, but to scale up, to grow constantly, and be ahead of another 100 competitors requires a completely different approach. Now, what would you say is your secret sauce in ensuring that you stay ahead?
As I said, one of it is execution, but also the fact that the entire team is very passionate about what they do, right? If you look at our team, massive sports fans, all of them, and the 5 or 10% that aren't, we convert them into sports fan after they join us. So, the belief that they have in the product that we are building, the problem that we are solving for users, and the value that we are creating translates into the ability to deliver the best product that users can use.
And Pranjal, any digital business is same as any other business. So there are a lot of theories that you can do pivot, and there are a lot of theories that you should not do pivot. Both work. Similarly, the number of decisions that any of us have made, I'm very sure we would have made equal number of wrong decisions as we made right decisions, as anyone else. What is important is that we treat it like exactly any other business, which means that you come out of the wrong decisions as early as possible, don't worry about the sunk cost, and you invest behind the right decisions once you get convinced. This is true for everyone, not only just us, right? So, there is no secret sauce generally that, okay, this is the way it will work. Yes, you need to have basic ingredients in terms of team, in terms of maybe capital, in terms of having the product market fit, but there is no one single right answer that this is the only way it will work.
I think one word which would be important is pivot, because, and I think, Alok, you would have done it, he would have done it, that every few months, if not couple of years, you rejig your business model, see what's wrong, and not remain stuck to it. Is that a critical piece?
Yes, you have to be adaptable and flexible, because the internet is changing. I mean, when we launched in 2008, just to give you an idea of how much the world has changed just since we launched Dream11, when we launched, Orkut was the #1 social network in India.
I don't think anybody remembers Orkut here. Does anybody?
Right?
Oh, unfortunately, that shows the age of the people here.
So Orkut was the #1 social network in India. The iPhone had just launched. It was a revolutionary new thing.
There was also MySpace, if you remember.
That's right. Correct. And I think that you can see in a decade how much has changed from, watching videos on tape recorders, right? Going to CDs, going to DVDs, going to USB drives, now watching on the cloud, and not having the patience to wait for 1 minute while Netflix buffers, right? The whole world changes constantly. And if you're especially in the tech space, you have to change. It's literally adapt or die. So I think you're absolutely right. Every couple of years, you have to be willing to almost challenge your fundamental beliefs of your business model, or then you'll be left behind.
I think the only exciting thing is, I'm sure you're the only company in the world, if not the country, which allows people in the office to continue to game and play, right? While on office time.
Yeah,
Right.
but our employees can't play against users. They can only play against themselves.
Only against themselves. Great. So I'm going to start taking some questions from the audience to keep the conversation going along. A very good question from my friend Lloyd Matthias, who's also an angel investor. I think it is about cultural maturity. And I think Alok and both of you would like to answer. We see a lot of public squabbles amongst the founders. It's like, I got $1 billion, another guy got $1 billion. And these guys talk about $1 billion the way we talk about few 100,000 rupees or a few thousand rupees. We are scared of buying a 200,000 car, but these guys are talking about billions of dollars, which is multi-crores. And then there's squabbles about, I want 10 crore more, somebody else wants 100 crores less. You've seen it in some of the founders who are squabbling, and there are huge corporate governance issues. Is there now, and I'll come to a deeper question on the ecosystem, that do you feel that we are now in a situation where this whole chase for that $1 billion valuation is leading to growing at a level where culture doesn't matter, there is no cultural maturity, the company is only chasing numbers because, what matters is how many millions of users you can show on the dashboard rather than anything else. So, Alok, you, and then Bhavit and Harsh.
So, I think somewhere this depends on the particular time. Today, yes, somewhere that's the flavor of the season, that a lot of people are chasing growth at whatever cost, and that is getting valued. And since it's getting valued, there is more excitement in the whole space. But look at the other side. It's ending up creating companies which are challenging the status quo, which are coming up with new business models. It's creating immense wealth for the team. It's creating, a very, very highly exciting environment of the whole ecosystem. The number of jobs being created. I think all the digital stage companies, if we put together, there will be at least 1 million plus jobs which have been created over the last 10 years. So multiple positive things. At some point, if someone wanted to join a startup, there will be question asked at the home that, what are you doing in life? Today is exactly ulta, where people want to join startups because it's not just about the commercial side, but also the problem that you are trying to solve for. And I'll just add one more thing. Harsh and us, all of us have been around for say almost 14 years. And Pranjal, you may remember, I was asked a question that 14 years ho gaye, kab tak apne aap ko startup bologe? At some point you have to grow up, right? As I said, these businesses are not different from any other business. But the one difference which exists, and why we would still want to be called a startup, is till the time we don't have fear of failure, we are still a startup. You keep on doing 100 stuff, some will work, some will not work, which traditionally in a normal company is not possible. And that's the biggest difference, I would say.
But I think in your defense, if 60-year-old Bollywood heroes can be acting as teenagers on screen, I think it's fair for you to be calling yourself startups.
So I think it's very important for culture. And culture, again, there is no wrong or right culture. According to us, there's only the culture that the founders set in the company. And then you attract talent that agrees with that culture. And if they like the culture, they'll grow, they'll outperform, and they'll love being there, and they'll call other people to join the company who believe in that culture as well. I think we had a idea of what our culture is until we had about 50 people. But once we crossed 50 people, we realized that there were bifurcations in what people felt were our culture. And so we wrote it down. And I think that was a very important learning for us, to have a crisp, concise culture, which for us is do put. So, we have an acronym, do put our culture first. And it's data, ownership, performance, user first, and transparency. And that really helps the company in aligning towards what's important for us. And that's really helped us in scaling up. And so I do agree with you that today's ecosystem, people are building valuation instead of building value. Entrepreneurs don't feel happy until they are on a path to becoming a unicorn. They don't talk about culture until they get there. They also, we were joking about this, but today I think in the Indian tech ecosystem, 7 years ago we raised our Series A, and that time we had put bootstrapped and then Series A. And Series A, it's the first it's the first letter of the alphabet, right? Today I think the last time we saw there was a incubator, accelerator, pre-seed, seed, pre-Series A, bridge to Series A, and a Series A. So if you're not $1 billion company by a Series A, then you failed. And I think this is a horrible expectation that entrepreneurs are living with, and they feel so pressurized by valuations and raising money that they don't just focus on building and solving core consumer needs.
No, but I'll just add to what Harsh was saying. I would have talked to maybe 300 investors over the last 1 year. Only in 2 meetings we were asked about culture or team or attrition at senior level. Only in 2 meetings. And sometimes it's baffling. I mean, if you're not asked these questions by board or investors, then how can you expect a very young entrepreneur to focus on such things? Look at the churn at the senior level in some of these companies. It's baffling. How can you have so many people leaving at such an early stage of the company? But that's what happens, because people are not focusing on these things. So, the only way typically in any company at early stage is you give them a lot of freedom with some boundary conditions, that's all. You can't control what people want to do on a day-to-day basis because you don't have that much bandwidth, but give them that much space as possible. And most of the time you will be surprised at how well people can perform.
Yes, I'll just add that, apart from the quantum and the pressure on valuation is the speed at which these companies are getting these valuations, right? So first-time entrepreneurs, 22, 23-year-old people, kids, they are, in 2 years, they're getting $1 billion valuation, and they don't know what is expected of a company of that size, right? They don't have the time to mature into what is corporate governance, how do we set the culture of the company. They have that pressure of increasing the valuation. And that's what makes some of these things fall apart, like even Pranjal was saying, whether it be squabbles, whether it be culture not being set the right way. So all these companies, they have mentors, they have advisors. I think that's important for them to then come in and help them understand what the expectations are to build a sustainable business.
Greed or the advantage of making quick money is not just for the founders. It's for your entire team, because there's a lot of stock. Everything is about valuation, as you said, valuation rather than value. So even the average professional who's working in the team is just focused on what kind of valuation am I getting on my stock options, right? And that creates a culture of toxic performance. And some of my friends who are in the startup ecosystem, they also in private conversations say that there's a lot of terrible behavior culture, where there's substance abuse, there is unnecessary pressure, there is of course toxic masculinity where women are not treated well. So what can be done to ensure that you improve the culture? One of the studies has shown that startups or companies which have been started by people with some experience, let's say the average median age of 40, 45 plus, tend to be far more successful than those started by 20-year-olds. Is that something which is important?
I think age is just a number. But I do believe there is a certain ability that younger people have to put everything on the line. With age obviously comes responsibilities, and you have your family, you have a job, you have to provide for your family. I think there are things that youngsters can achieve, which someone starting a company at 40 plus cannot. They can't risk it all as easily.
But the counter is, Harsh, that a younger person will be more aggressive but less respectful of rules and everything else which protects the ecosystem.
I agree, absolutely. And so that's why I'm saying the best mix, I believe, which we've tried to have at our company as well. I mean, we talk about some of these guys as kids. We are kids to some of y'all. You can see how big the problem is. I think the whole point is that even if you're in your late 30s, which Bhavit and I are, we surround ourselves with more gray hair, more baldness than we have over the years. Then we have to make sure that we have a lot of experience. And I think that's where investors come in, right? If your investors chase you for the wrong metrics, as an early founder in your early 20s, how would you ever have the experience to know that this is not what I'm supposed to do? If your investors only ask you, what is your GMV? How much, what's your top line? And how fast are you growing? What's your percentage growth? I don't care about your burn rate. I don't care about your runway. I don't care about your top level churn. Then that's the culture we're building. So I think we need more people from organizations like AIMA, that we need them to be the people mentoring and advising these startup founders and having that good balance of, short-term growth and long-term growth. I think that balance is coming in India.
Most of the companies which are in the startup stage will play on the edge. But that does not mean any of the things that you've mentioned. In fact, as part of the ecosystem, I rarely heard such things. I have talked to so many founders of companies which are quite scaled up. And rarely such things have come to the fore, that they are seeing such stuff in their company. And to Harsh's point, exactly this is the role that the board and the investors have to play. I was telling you before the session that InfoEdge was our first investor. And Sanjeev was very clear that first slide, whenever we used to go for reviews every month, has to have only two numbers, collections and cash burn, not even revenue, because revenue is Excel. At early stage, if you don't control these two, you're dead. And that sort of set the tone for us till now, that we are very, very serious about cash burn and collections. But it has to somewhere come from someone who has gone through that journey. A lot of times, yes, young people may not understand the importance of such matrices if they're not sort of asked these questions.
Bhavit, I'm going to ask you a more pointed question to build on these points. It seems to me that investor can be a part of the problem or the solution, right? So it really depends on what kind of investors you choose. Now you could be desperate enough to say, I'll take anybody's money, or do you think there is today's situation, not necessarily yours, but in today's ecosystem, do you think startups or people or companies which are looking for funds, do they have the patience, maturity, and even the ability to wait and choose the right investors? Because at one level you think that people are just waiting with bags of cash to drop it into your company, but at the same time, are people, or what advice would you give to companies who are looking for funding today?
Yeah, so to start off, I'll tell our personal story, right? When we were looking at fundraising, Harsh was the guy who used to go and meet all these investors. He was at New York that time studying, so he used to spend his weekdays in New York, weekends in Silicon Valley, trying to pitch and get us funding.
He had the easy job.
Bhavit was the one who had to do the work at the office.
So he's approached 150 investors and all of them rejected us over a 6-month period, right?
150?
Yeah, 150. Over 2 years. So, at that point in time, even for us, we would be like, anyone giving us money would be great. Let's at least get some money to get our business to scale. So I understand the plight for founders when, they need the funds to scale up. Obviously, the ideal way is to get the right investor as a partner, but it's not always possible. It's just that, if we can get, the investor community, the advisor community to advise in all these companies in the right way, that's where all these companies will be able to build real value. Like one of the things also is, today at Series A, some founders think that they should be cashing out some of their initial stock, or they feel the obligation to give ESOP buyback to their employees at such an early stage in the company, right? And some of it is because of market dynamics, because there's not enough supply and they want the top talent. But these are kind of things that we need to work as a group, as investors, as advisors, as mentors, to guide these entrepreneurs in the right way.
I think also we read in the paper every day, right? Oh, this company raised 100 million, this company raised 50 million, this company raised 500 million. But the truth of the matter is it's extremely competitive at every level. That competition doesn't stop. It seems easy from the outside, but I can assure you, even for us to go out there and put together a round today, at the right value, of course, that we deem fit, is not easy. And at an early stage, Pranjal, honestly speaking, anyone gives you money, you're going to take it. You're not looking for the right investor, because at that point you have an idea, you're executing, and you just need cash. You need cash to actually go and execute. If you can get the right investor on board with that, wow, that's amazing, right? But the answer is honestly, at the very early stages, you can't choose. You just go with the flow.
You can create an advisory board of people that you trust and who are experienced. But as Harsh said, yes, typically at that stage you don't have as much choice. At least that's what we didn't have. Things may have changed a little bit right now because of the sort of liquidity available in the market. But creating a small advisory board is not a bad idea. Whether it's through angel investors or whether it's directly reaching out to people in the industry and getting them involved.
One question I want to ask is on the overall ecosystem. So most companies and startups began sometimes when there were no rules, no policy frameworks, including yours. But at the same time today there is a realization, and every state government and of course the national government realizes the importance of encouraging new companies to launch and become wealth creators, employment generators. How do you see this evolving in the next 5 years? What would you like ideally to see happening in India, which can perhaps start now between the attitude of the industry, attitude of investors, attitude of the government, which will deepen and make our entire ecosystem far more mature, stable, and have steady growth?
So I think, a lot has changed in the last 5 years or so. The amount of PE, VC, hedge fund money that's flowing into India is ginormous. There are now India funds dedicatedly, where up to 5 years ago, there were global funds investing into India. But I think the government has played a huge role in this as well. Because like you said, without policy, many of these tech disruptors can't survive. So I think it's amazing to see that our Honorable Prime Minister and the entire group of ministers under them has put Digital India, Make in India, Startup India right at the forefront. They've put this target of $1 trillion digital economy. And from what we can see, let me give you our own example. For 14 years, gaming didn't really belong to a ministry. It was, this orphan child. And we often went and said, we would like to be regulated. We would like to belong to a ministry. And it is now for the first time that the Honorable Prime Minister has said, even with the budget, the Honorable FM has said that India can be a gaming superpower. We're already one of the top 5. And we would like to regulate gaming and take it forward. That's a huge step forward for us. The government is today looking at having this positioning that whatever is doing right by the country is solving problems, consumers want it, they're doing things the right way, we will not ban them, we will regulate them. And I think for any disruptor, you welcome regulation which will help you cement your pathway forward, raise money and build scale. Because if you're a disruptor, the very definition of disruption often means that there's no real white or black, you're in the gray area. And I think that's something that we've seen change significantly. The government's attitude to embrace and adapt to this new technology age.
Sure. So, the other thing is also there have already been a lot of policies that have started off. Something like digital payments, enablement through, say, UPI, which has done almost 5 billion transactions in March, right? Exactly. And so it's about, going ahead on that path and ensuring that the life of digital companies is made easier via policies and enablement drivers, which have already been put into place. That'll really help companies grow, because then they don't have to think about these other things which are already in place. For example, when we started off, we had to maybe reach out to 5 different banks ki, acha, a payment gateway to make payments. How do people make payments? And then we integrated with one bank. Then, there are places where we have high scale, then we have to work with banks on how do we manage that scale.
I think we took a year to set up a bank account. This was, 10 years ago.
That's true.
No, I think, things need to be changed even more. The compliance burden and the regulatory burden at an early stage company is still quite a lot. The problem is not unique to the sector. I think it's about the mindset. There may be 1% or maybe 10% companies which are trying to game the system. And because of the rules have been created which impact the other 90% also. And yes, that's the ecosystem we all work in. The number of compliances, I think, are 68,000 in India, out of which 35,000 plus are just labor-related compliances. So if you want entrepreneurs to spend time on those, then how will they build the business? And that's the reality. Things have moved in the right direction. A lot more needs to be done.
Thank you. So I'll come to the last question. We have to end now. There's a coffee break coming up and another exciting session. But you are talking about being disruptors, but you can be disrupted too, right? Absolutely. Now, I can make this claim that the whole AR, VR, augmented reality, mixed reality might upset your apple cart, and soon you will have to say, well, I'm selling this company and starting something of my own. And similarly for you, Alok, somebody new will come with completely new idea, and everybody will say Policybazaar is an old legacy company. We don't want to work with old companies. We want to work with some new companies because they have thought of some solution which we didn't even realize we needed. What's next, and how do you ensure that you don't get disrupted? And I'd like a short answer from all three of you.
So what we've done is that we've taken Dream11, which is our one stable business, mature, high-frequency usage, and we now invest in entrepreneurs. So we now have 10 portfolio companies where we invest in entrepreneurs, and we ask them to either build or cannibalize our own business so that we can hope to cannibalize our business before someone else does. And so I think that's the short, crisp answer.
Bhavit?
Yeah, I think just building on to Harsh, we think a lot, and that is always on our mind on what could cannibalize and how can we get disrupted and how do we cannibalize our own business, right? So that in such a way that we build something else which would have anyways disrupted us, but then we already have that ability to have that intelligence from the market, from entrepreneurs. So why not we disrupt ourselves and build something which otherwise anyways would have disrupted us?
Hello?
Yeah, in our category at Touchwood, it's a very different category. So you need a lot more trust from the consumers. So what we have done over time is for both the brands, Policybazaar and Policybazaar, we have got CEOs in place. So between me and Yashish now, we have more time to focus on the moats, more time to focus on looking at the new opportunities, going deeper into the value chain. So all the stuff which will keep us future ready. So yeah, we have done from the management side that sort of spread.
I'll close on a very fascinating observation. I just realized many of you are business leaders, that when you pose a similar question to a legacy company, they will say they will de-risk, they will diversify, they'll get into multiple sectors, multiple businesses to ensure that if one goes down, something else keeps them up. But both of you have not said that. I mean, three of you have not said that. You've said we're going to either create and then buy up the competition, or we're going to just go deeper into what we are. So is that what is defining the unicorn culture?
I think we all understand that change is something which is given. I mean, we also tried to do something which was unorthodox at some point.
Right.
And there is always opportunity for us to be disrupted as well. So we can do it ourselves or we can wait to be disrupted. So why not try to figure out what are the areas which can be potential weakness for ourselves. So I think, yeah.
Thank you. So may the disruptors always be disrupted and continue to disrupt others. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.